Bro, I'm low-key faded, bro.
Highway.
Cowboys blood.
What's this guy supposed to be, the ultimate badass?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Today we're going to go over the Cowboys 2025 NFL Draft Class. This is serious. Cap mode time. Boom. All right, so let's get into these grades, man. It was a new draft class, the Cowboys. You know, we talked about this draft class not being that good. It really wasn't that good. It was one that was perfectly tailored for the Cowboys who needed to add more depth. This was a depth draft. You know, it was not very top heavy. You know, you had about 12 to 13 first round grades. I think the Cowboys said they had like 13 or so. I think McClay said they had 13, and I was there around 11 or 12. But so let's go over my Cowboys blog grading scale. I do this a little bit different from everybody else, man. You know, I keep these grades realistic, you know, looking at where they were drafted, you know, and the potential and this sort of thing. You know, there's a lot of like, oh, this was an A draft or this and that. You know, let's be real here. Okay, so I also have a link to last year's previous draft class if you want to go back and just revisit that and see how those grades turned out. All right, but for right now, let's get into the first pick. All right, the first pick, Tyler Booker. All right, so you know, going through the grade scale, I give Booker a 91. All right, a potential cornerstone player or an all-pro and an all-pro. So, you know, a 91, you know, it's in that A range, right? So I'm not gonna give him a 99 or 95. The 91 is kind of on the low side because, like I said, you come from a bus factory, and it is well documented. You cannot deny it. Anybody that denies it, they're just being a fucking idiot. So, Bama offensive lineman, high bus factor. So I think he'll fit in here really good with the Cowboys as long as he puts in the work and, you know, does what he says he's gonna do here. You know, so if he can do that, it'll stay an A grade. You know, but if not, you know, he'll tumble on down. But I have him as an A. I think it's a good pick. It addressed a high need for the Cowboys at right guard position, and he was one of the higher graded offensive linemen, you know, which I mean, but every year there's a Bama O lineman who comes in here with all the accolades, all of everything, you know, they all do. I mean, they all look good, but for some reason when they hit the NFL, they take their foot off the pedal. Let's hope Booker is not one of those, and he can become one of these players, cornerstone player, like I said, and give us some longevity there, like Zach did. All right, let's go to the next pick in the second round. All right, our second round pick was Donovan Ezeiruaku. I gave him an 87. Okay, an 87 on the grading scale. So that puts him in the upper echelon of a B type of grade. You know, I think that he will come in here and have the potential, you know, to be a player for us, to be somebody that could you know, potentially earn a second contract. That's what the 87 is. You know, he could be a Pro Bowler. I think he has all those capabilities. So 87 is what I gave him here, and he could be more. He could be more. But I think that's his floor. You know what I mean? And the ceiling could be all the way up to a 99. Okay. In the third round, the Cowboys went Shavon Revel. He gives a 78 from me. You know what I mean? I think people giving this guy or this pick an A is just freaking insane, dude. Like, it's you know, he has a history of being hurt, all right, going all the way back to high school. So he's a hurt player, all right. And of course, like I mentioned in my last video, you know, you get a Dr. Cooper special, a banged up player. So like I said before, you know, I don't like the Dr. Cooper crap, man, because what that means is you're getting a banged up player. All right. There's nothing special about it, about you're getting inside info and this and that. You're getting a banged up player at the end of the day. You know, that period. You're getting a banged up player. So, you know, before the injury, you know, he had, you know, good speed, you know, but where's that at now? You know what I mean? Where's the confidence at in the knee when he's cutting, you know, and taking off, trying to cover these receivers? Where's that confidence at? So right now, 78, you know, it's not bad, you know. That puts him in the potential to eventually start and a depth player, which I think he will. You know, they might thrust him immediately into a starter role, but you know, he's definitely a depth player, right? Because they needed depth here while Trevon Diggs was getting back from his injury. So he gets that grade there for me. You know, injuries, you know, Dr. Cooper special, 78. All right. Then we get to the 5th round, and that was our running back, Jaydon Blue out of Texas. I have a higher grade here than I did Revo. Yeah, he gets an 82 for me. You know what I mean? He will come in here and potentially earn a second contract, kind of like you know, some of these other running backs that we've had here. Could he be in that same type of vein, you know, where you know, you're getting good snaps and you earn yourself a second contract? You know what I mean? So I have him in that range. You know, if you look at this grading scale, 89 to 80, potential to earn a second contract, a Pro Bowler. You know, he could be that. You know, Tony Pollard, you know, did very well here, and he would have been in that same range. You know, going back and grading Tony Pollard, he would be in that same range, potential to earn a second contract, Pro Bowler. You know what I mean? So that's the running back. I think that he will be here for a while. I think he's the planet running back started in this draft. You have your Tony Pollard speed back with Jaydon Blue. Next year's draft, you're gonna get your 3-down back, your power back, and then you'll have that 1-2 punch again. The 1-2 punch this year is gonna be Jaydon Blue with a mix of Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, these dudes. You know what I mean? So, you know, but you know, if he shows flashes of being more than a, you know, a 3rd down back or a specialty back or something like this, you know, he can earn more and eventually take snaps away from some of these other vets, which that is the plan. You know what I mean? So that's Jaydon Blue. Let's go to the next pick. Shamar James, the linebacker out of Florida. You know what I mean? He gets a 70. All right. And that's on the low end of potential to eventually start and depth. All right. So if you look where you drafted this guy, you know, Shamar James, where you got him, he fits right in that range. You know, he does have the potential to eventually start. You know what I mean? Like, our linebacker core is not that deep. We've got players that they get banged up. You know, I wouldn't say injury prone across the board, but a lot of these guys have had injuries and have missed time, almost all of them. Okay, so he will have an opportunity to eventually start, but I think he's more of a depth player. You know what I mean? So that puts him in this range. He's more of a depth player for me. So 70, I think, is the mark for him. You know, could he be a diamond in the rough and be more than that? Possibly, but I think that's a fair grade for him. All right, let's go to the next one. Ajani Cornelius. You know what I mean? Where they picked him up late in the 3rd day of this draft, he gets a 69. All right, which is the upper part of this rotational, developmental, or practice squad player. Okay, we know that Ajani Cornelius is not going to take anybody's job right out the gate. You know, but we need to see what he does in the preseason. You know what I mean? Training camp has become a glorified hype video. You know what I mean? Training camp, you don't get true I mean, you're getting practice. You're getting practice. You're getting installations. You're not getting a true feel of the potential of some of these guys. You know what I mean? You're getting a lot of like cherry picking of hype, cherry picking of some highlights of a player making a catch, making a run, beating this person, you know, putting somebody on their butt here and there. But it's when you get into the preseason when you see the real competition. And that's where you have to look at these players. So, you know, I'll be happy to see him doing really good in training camp, but it's when the preseason comes. I want to see what Ajani Cornelius does in the preseason. Does he in fact maul the hell out of players? You know what I mean? Does he in fact hold the line there? You know, run blocker. You know, does he in fact show some versatility at guard and tackle? You know what I mean? So I think, you know, that is a fair grade for him. Rotational, developmental, or practice squad player. You know what I mean? I think that he probably will be on the roster. However, I think that they're trying to jettison some of these older, low-hanging fruit guys that have been here for a while. Like, well, let's go, Bass, maybe Hoffman. These dudes, you know, bringing some fresh blood, bringing some different type of players here that are more like what Schottenheimer and this new O-line coach wants in place. So, and Connor Riley, especially Coach Connor Riley, the offensive lineman coach, coming straight from the college ranks. So, you know, I think that's a fair grade there. You know, 69, but that could skyrocket into who knows what. You know what I mean? If this guy, you know, shows that he can be a depth guy and be your immediate number one backup on the left or right side, or maybe even backing up, you know, a steal. And then if he gets a chance and holds up, you know what I mean, that grade, you know, and a readjustment in 3 years could go skyrocket up. All right. So that's a fair grade there on him for where he was drafted and the skill set. All right. Then we get to the next player, Toia out of UCLA. Got the similar type of grade for him, exactly, 69 as well. You know, I think you get yourself a rotational guy, which he will be. He will be in rotation, all right? But you're still going to need to develop him. You know, there's flaws in his game. That's why he fell this far in the draft. And, you know, could he should be able to stick around. You know what I mean? I don't see him as a practice squad guy. I think he will, in fact, beat out like someone like a Justin Rogers or provide immediate depth with Mozzie Smith. I mean, these guys might even beat him out. That might even beat out Mozzie Smith, and I think that's kind of what you're hoping here. So you're looking at obviously a one tech with Toia. So that, you know, he falls right in that bracket there of 69 to 60, rotational, developmental. All right. So I'll have him on the high side there on a 69. All right. The next player, the running back, Phil Mafah, the running back out of Clemson. Wasn't very high on this pick here. You know, I thought they could have gone a different route. Like I think the Cincinnati kid was available. I think that would have been a good pick. But they went Phil Mafah. You know what I mean? Clemson this past year was not known for a running game or had a threatening running game. You know what I mean? So he's right on that cusp for me, man. I could see him being a practice squad guy, to be quite honest. So that's why he gets the 60 there. Right on the cusp, but maybe he'll show us something and can be more than that. But I think it's going to be an uphill battle for Mafah to beat out like a Javonte or Miles Sanders. You know what I mean? That's who he's going to have to leapfrog. And who knows where the hell Deuce Vaughn falls in this whole shit, right? They should never have drafted Deuce Vaughn. What stupid crap that shit was. All right. But yeah, I think Phil Mafah, his skill set and where he was drafted, that's a fair grade there, a 60 for him. All right. Rotational, developmental, or practice squad. More on the practice squad for him. I think that's where he's going to go. And then they, in the draft with Tommy Akingbesote, I give him a 65 here. All right. And that's another rotational guy, right? I think he'll also be in the rotation here. Now, his main competition is probably going to be Justin Rogers. You know what I mean? So, or, you know, just How many defensive tackles do they carry will be the next question, right? Who's your 3 tech behind Osa? You know what I mean? So that I don't know if they're quite done here, quite done there yet at defensive tackle. They might add some bodies there in free agency. You know, now that the draft is over and free agency is over, they might add some bodies there. You know what I mean? So Tommy, you know, he's right there at a 65. So I think he's like kind of like right in the middle there as far as like a rotational, developmental. You know, I think there's some development that has to happen there, and he could be a practice squad candidate. All right, so I think that's a fair grade there for him. And when you calculate all of these grades, this year's draft class gets you to a 75. All right, which is a C. All right. Now, very fair grade. You know what I mean? Very fair indeed, because it's a C. You know, you think about the needs that this team had and where they, you know, ultimately went a different route and how they spun it. You know what I mean? We all knew that they weren't going to. Well, not we. No, I'll take that back. Not all of us knew that they weren't going to take a wide receiver in the first round. A lot of people ignored the analytics in the history of this team, and they were insistent that we were going to take a wide receiver in the first round. They weren't. You know what I mean? It was O-line. You know what I mean? So Booker, good talent. But then, you know, as you're navigating through here, and then after we finished on with the second and third round without a receiver or a running back, a lot of fans were like, hey man, we didn't address wide receiver, we didn't address running back. And if you look in this draft class, you know, there's no receiver. They didn't draft a receiver. You know what I mean? So they're gonna go with what they think is a ready-made wide receiver core for Dak Prescott. We know it's not true. So they're gonna have some difficulty there in the passing game. You know what I mean? You're gonna really have to hope that Ferguson can be that number 2 pass catcher. Lamb, Ferguson, you know, then one of these other guys. Maybe somebody can develop. Maybe Flournoy leapfrogs Tolbert, because he hit the damn ceiling as soon as he was drafted. You know what I mean? His floor and ceiling were like this, pretty much. That's it. That's Tolbert. Floor and ceiling. You know, so shitty pick, dude. Not good. And then the other guys, you know what I mean? So there's still rumors that they might even trade for a receiver still. So or even pick up one of the free agents, maybe Keenan Allen or Amari Cooper. And you know, of course, they go in as usual. They go and get you a banged up player, a Dr. Cooper special, but this time in the third round, not the second round. But still, that Dr. Cooper crap is a hindrance to this team. It's not an advantage. It is not an advantage as much as some people try to say it is. It's a disadvantage because it funnels damaged, beat up players into this roster. Unreliability. If you're not available, you're not helping the team. So, you know what I mean? I hate that shit, bro. Like after this season, I am fucking done with the Dr. Cooper bullshit. I used to be one of these guys that was, oh yeah, man, we got the inside and he helped Jalen Smith and this and that. And after that, it became, watch for this guy. Dr. Cooper did the surgery for this motherfucker. He did the Achilles surgery here and this and that. And it's not even me about complaining. I mean, think about it, guys. It's a real thing, bro. Like, we gotta get away from funneling of injured players, bro. And it's this Dr. Cooper bullshit. All right, but that's the grade here for this draft class. I'll post the last year's draft class grades, and you can go back and look at those as well, and see how those ended up, you know, a year later. But we usually like to do a 3-year follow up, so we'll do that here in a couple of days. Follow up on draft class from 3 years ago, and we'll follow up on those grades. But that's all I have today, guys. What realistic grade do you give this draft class? A B, C, D, or F? All right. Let me know in the comments. I'm very interested to see how people out there view this draft class as a whole. Peace.
Yeah, old school, baby.